welcome to Women in Tech Republic, an Allies, Diversity and Inclusion panel event. For those of you that might be new to our events, just as a bit of background, Women in Tech Republic is a Third Republic employee-led effort that challenges the gender imbalance that exists among software engineers and other technical roles. Our mission is to connect, inspire and develop the careers of female technologists in order to make technology a more diverse and inclusive working environment. This evening, we're joined by our speakers, Leanne, Jay and Carina, who will kick off the evening with their thoughts around the past year for women in tech and what they're predicting and hoping to see in 2022. What we'll do after that is then split off into the breakout rooms to give you the chance to share your own experiences on our subtopics. So we've got, how has the past year impacted your career? And the second breakout room is, what does the future hold for women in tech? I'm now going to pass you over to Jay to kick us off.
Hey everybody, I'm Dr. J. I use they as a pronoun. I identify as a non-binary person, so it's interesting to be at a Women in Tech event because I have some interesting thoughts on how we include non-binary people and how we make space for people to be non-binary and not have non-binary seen as women light or something like that. Have it seen and counted and be really intentional about what we do. But aside from that, I have a job title that we were discussing earlier, Harbinger of Change, because I work at ThoughtWorks, which is a software consultancy. I'm a service designer, business analyst-y type. I can't do codey stuff. I call it codey stuff, and that says a lot about my technical abilities. What else about me? My gender, my name is a single letter, my gender is a sentence, and I'm a troublemaker and a hashtag queer nuisance because I do everything that's branded. Very quickly, the next year, I just want to scream because it's been almost 2 years now that I have been stuck doing this from 9 in the morning till 7 at night or more, maybe with a break, because your business analyst is the person running 80% of your meetings, facilitating 80% of your meetings. What do I look forward to? Well, I did go into the office twice this year. 3 times actually. I went into an office and saw people. I would like to do that again. Fuck Omicron. Fuck more lockdowns. It's just going to happen. I've just had to give up on my going away to Amsterdam for New Year because more lockdowns. Which breakout room I'm going to be in? I'm going to be in the looking forward because I'll be swearing a lot about what the fuck's going to be going on. So, Carina or Leanne, do you want to follow that? Which one of you feels most inclined to? Carina, you have come off mute. I'll throw it to you.
Yes, because I didn't unmute before, right? I already pressed the unmute button to make sure I make it in time. So yeah, hi, I'm Carina. I'm an engineer actually, and also a software engineer by heart. I developed C++ software for more than 10 years, numerical simulation, so codey type, like Jay would say. But now I'm an engineering manager, so not doing any coding anymore. But so I see myself as the protector of my engineers. So I'm making sure my engineers can work and have nothing on their head, not too many meetings, just normal minimal meetings, and don't need to take care of anything, but I'm having their back. So that's how I would define my role. Last year, actually I started working as an engineer manager this year in January in a fintech, so it's probably going to be interesting to fintech ladies today. And which is in tech we already have very little women, in fintech we have even less women, because finance is also not a really women field. So it was interesting because I worked with almost 50% engineering managers, female engineering or non-male engineering managers, say it this way, and that was really a great thing. But I mean, so the company could make it work to hire female engineering managers, non-male engineering managers, but they didn't manage to keep them, more or less. Well, sadly, most of my non-male colleagues already left until the end of the year. So I think we have still a lot to do in the future. That would be also my outlook, hiring. We don't get under control. We are still working on keeping positions open also, until at least one woman applies. And then also searching women on the market or non-male people on the market for as engineers is a really tough challenge, and also as managers. Yeah, that will be a challenge. How to hire more diverse people in fintech, how to keep them, and how to develop and grow them and make them happy to stay in the company. So that's definitely my outlook for 2022.
Yes, so I am the head of people for a fintech. We have employees across Europe, which is really cool. I am definitely not a codey person. I do own everything from a people perspective. I think the codey person is going to stick from what I can gather. I handle everything from compensation and benefits to diversity and inclusion to absolutely anything that should or should not fall under a people umbrella. I guess when I think back over the last year, I think from a business perspective, not a lot has really changed for us, given that we were remote first prior to the pandemic. Yes, a few of us did spend time in the office, and yes, we have had to change what we do from a meetup and a social perspective. But actually, we didn't have a lot of the issues that other people have faced in terms of, getting people's home setups correctly, working, having audio issues, Zoom calls where actually half the call can't hear, half the call can't talk, and all that kind of stuff. I guess in terms of what I've noticed as far as diversity, I think whilst I haven't noticed big changes in my own organisation, I do quite a lot of volunteering externally, and I have noticed that with the charity that I volunteer for, I've definitely seen an increase in the number of females that have actually faced discrimination in the workplace, mainly because of increased pressures on organisations, making redundancies, putting employees on furlough and all of that kind of stuff. I think some of the good strides that had previously been made in terms of diversity and inclusion have also gone back a little bit because organisations are focused on needing to cut costs and think about other areas rather than actually investing in diversity and inclusion initiatives. And then, I guess in 2022, I would love to think about what we can do organisationally to really make fintech a more diverse industry. So not just thinking about gender diversity, but also thinking about how we can encourage people from more diverse groups to study maths, study science, to pursue a degree in computer science, whatever it may be. I think that's it from me.
So what we're going to do now is break off into the breakout rooms.
It'd be great to have a quick summary maybe of the conversation as a whole, and then Carina, I'm not sure if you'd want to summarize maybe what was discussed in our room, and then maybe we can have a kind of like whole group discussion on either side of the breakout rooms.
Sure, I can go first. So hard to sum up all this because we had like a lot of separate stories which were really interesting. So I felt like the room was very interactive. I really like this, that everyone shared. So did we see an improvement in the last year or in the last years, over the last years, or not so much? I think we did see some improvements, maybe also on the like sexual harassment side, and on this not getting too touchy, but also on the other hand a slow downgrade where we see like not improvements but I think we are presented with more challenges than for the next year.
So we had quite a good discussion. Please jump in if I have forgotten anything. So I guess we began by talking about inclusion and actually the fact that we think more companies should be less focused on hitting diversity numbers and specific stats, but more about how companies can encourage everyone just to be themselves, whatever that is, and feel that they are at home and in a safe environment to actually do that. I think the other kind of big thing for us was talking about, I guess, a lack of understanding of point of view or situation. So I think we talked about some examples where people had recalled situations or things that had happened, and I guess nobody had understood why, somebody might feel unsafe in a given situation or why somebody may have felt excluded. So I think it's about finding, I think the interesting thing that came out of this was the fact that particularly men are not realizing actually the severity of a situation or how something is making somebody feel until actually there's a big news article or there's some kind of big like thing out there that makes them sit back and think like, oh yeah, like I didn't realize, like actually it hadn't occurred to me that women feel unsafe walking home, or it hadn't occurred to me that something would happen at 6 p.m. Like I wouldn't be concerned at all about, you know, taking the tube home drunk at midnight. Like that had never occurred to me. And I think for most people, or for most men, I think it was felt in our group that actually there needs to be more story sharing, and people need to be more sharing of their experiences where they're comfortable, to say, well, actually, like I'm not that comfortable going home tonight. You know, please make sure you check in to confirm that I'm like home safely, or whatever it might be. But sharing of experiences so that others get a feel for how somebody might feel in a given situation. And just generally having, I guess, empathy for somebody's situation and saying, look, like actually I don't understand because I've never been there, but I'm really trying to understand. Like I want to know more, and like I need to learn in this space.
Leanne, I think you just covered the point that I was going to make. Was it's about empathy as well. It's not just understanding, it's about being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Even if you don't get what they're on about, you can't quite understand it, you're still struggling to get your head around it. You can still empathize with them. If somebody says, I feel frightened, or this situation is making me nervous, your ability to empathize should overtake your ability to understand almost. So if somebody's saying, I feel nervous walking home, I mean, I've had team members happily walk me home or walk me back, because prior to the lockdown, I had to travel a lot, and I would often end up in a strange city, and we'd go out for dinner and we'd be staying in different hotels, and I would have my team members walk me back to my hotel, and I'd be like, oh, is it okay? This is 5 minutes out of your way, team. And the guys would be like, yeah, it's totally fine. We want to make sure that you get home, that you get back safely. Why would we not walk you home? You know, and it's kind of almost having that, you don't realize that you've not had it until you have it. You've not had that care until somebody instantly turns around and says, hey, I want to make sure that you can walk across this city safely, or you can walk around this corner safely. But that's people's ability to empathize, which goes beyond that ability to understand. And people can empathize without really understanding the situation. How do we build empathy? Fuck knows. Because putting it on us to share our stories is really hard, because it's hard to find a safer space to be vulnerable enough to share the story of why I feel uncomfortable walking home late at night. Why, despite the fact that I live in an area that is up and coming, there's still times at night where I would rather catch an Uber home than walk home, catch the tube and walk.
Yeah.
I saw Dudu had their hand up, or...
Yeah, I was about to say, like, whenever I raise this issue, an organic issue within system, so it's not only personal all the time, I found myself suggested empathizing with some men, and I think this empathy is also widely misunderstood, because I think we are talking about being empathetic towards minorities, like towards actually whom are not targeted when this system is built. And just I wanted to highlight this, like, because whenever there is a conflict, even in a racial matters or in gender matters, I find, like, I don't know how, but suddenly we are talking about emphasizing with the white men, and we are actually having talks for devil's advocacy, and officially, like, it's being officially run. So yeah, I am not saying this is something that shouldn't be done, but I don't think it's priority. But we are actually doing it as priority.
we actually had an interesting comment also in our round. I just remembered something. I'm not sure who said it, but like we need to bring more women in power, like in power positions, and then we need to make sure that the women in power also support women or non-men, right? And the comment that I thought was interesting was, it's not that easy as a woman also, like, to do this, because you have like different things you think about. I don't know. Yeah, Catherine. Yeah. Now that you switch on your video, I remember. Yeah. So for me, it's like I'm in this leadership position for kind of the first time. So I also need to make sure I'm, like, keeping this position, but also at the same time promoting women on this uneasy stand that I have there. So I'm not sure, Catherine, what your argumentation was, but I thought this was really interesting.
Completely different from that. So I'm not particularly concerned about hanging on to my job. I've got enough people contacting me that I'm a bit arrogant about that, perhaps. But I mean, I'd like to keep it, obviously, but I don't feel like supporting women or supporting or non-supporting anyone's going to make much of a difference to that, to be honest. I think that what I'm seeing is when I'm interviewing people, for example, I'm only interviewing for technical roles. So actually that's not true either, but I'm finding when I'm interviewing women, I want to look at what they've done. And when I'm interviewing men, there is so much positive bias towards what their potential is that I am using all sorts of tricks. Like I now religiously use a question bank, and I notice of myself if I am expressing myself differently, because it's exactly the same questions every time theoretically, but actually it's not. And if I'm giving people little helpers, okay, this is someone that I'm clearly positively biased towards, or if I'm not, then that's a signal to me which helps me during the interview to kind of change direction. And I'm trying to keep an eye on who it is I'm doing that for. What is it that's making me positively or negatively biased about a person? And I'm finding that I was actually shocked, having been a technical person for 25 years or so, just the idea that I personally would be saying, hey, you've got to prove to me you've done this already, when I'm not doing that with anyone else. That was just a shock. So I'm always double checking myself now, because I don't want to be that person. My mum was a woman in tech and a leader in tech, and she hated having women on her team, and she refused to have me on her team when I was looking to get a promotion out of a different area. So I know what it's like on the other side of the table, and I don't want to be that person. And it's harder than you'd think not to be.
What you say, it's a very important point. This is something that I'm writing about just right now. I'm just about to push out a blog article about that, how to overcome your own bias. It's a very, very important point, especially when it comes to gender. And what I also have noticed in my personal research, I mean, you cannot call it research because I don't say, but because I don't do research, I just use other people's research, is that people don't consider gender bias as an everyday bias. And I assume, I'm using the word assumption here, is that they would always bring it back to some other everyday bias, for example, the likability bias, or some other everyday bias. Like we have like around 12 biases that we face every day, that we use ourselves every day. And I find it very intriguing that gender bias, like this is my first point, gender bias is not one of those everyday biases, even though women complain about this on a daily basis, like even single women or single individuals. And the other thing is very important when overcoming your own biases is what you just did. Basically, you draw your own metrics. You build your own measurements on how you want to measure an individual person, maybe even also compared to another person. And there I'm also going a little bit deeper on what I've learned from like also some researchers. Even there you can do some mistakes. I would like to put in some more thoughts into it, and I will soon, very soon publish it. I'd like to share this because it's affecting like every single individual, men, women, and whatnot. That we are, we are choosing people, let's say most of the time because we like them, not because of what they actually can do.
Catherine, thank you so much for sharing your internal biases. And I think there's something within IT which I recognized and I've seen, and it's different between Australia and New Zealand and here. In Australia and New Zealand, you're often hired for your potential, much more than here you're hired for your experience. So if you've not done something, you're very unlikely to get hired into that role. So just because a manager has never seen somebody like you do this role, it's very, very hard to make that jump upwards, and it happens all the time. Now, it kind of, I mean, I've just become a principal consultant at ThoughtWorks. So I'm now working with C-level, for the last couple of years, I've been working with C-level executives. I've been working at the very top echelons with boards and with companies. This person gets to walk into the room with boards and deal with C-level execs and things like that. That's a very hard thing for people to see that I could do it. And I can understand why, because I don't look like anyone else who's doing it. So if you can't see, and it's very hard to be what you can't see, but it's also very hard for somebody to put you in a role when they can't see anyone like you doing that role. Because it's very hard to imagine the slightly crazy, slightly queer, blue-haired, vibrant person walking into a room full of grey suits and being respected and being able to perform and doing all of those things. And it's not till you've had the support and been able to do it that it's kind of like, oh yeah, you can do this thing. But it's like, it's really hard for somebody to see a woman as a senior lead on a team or a tech lead, which is what I'm assuming Carina and Catherine are as tech managers, as kind of that tech lead management position, if they don't have any in the company, if they've never had a woman do that role before, they don't know that they have that bias. But if a woman is applying for it, they're like, oh, I've never seen somebody like you do this role before. And of course they're going to, the way that people hire is going to stop them from doing that. Because we don't hire we don't hire or promote for potential. We hire and promote based on experience in this country, and that's a huge bias. And we're missing don't even get me started on the thousands of broke-ass queers who are working crazy jobs who could never break into tech, even if they've got the right brains, because what they do can't be described in the same language as us, even though they do the same things, even though they've got those same skills and they've built them up. They may not describe them in a different way, and we won't hire them because we haven't seen them do it on their CV. Just anyway, I'll put my hand down and stop ranting.
May I say something to follow up with Catherine's statement about her mother? I've been hired by a woman engineer to a research project, and I've been bullied by her as well. And that time I was feeling like, okay, I mean, it's about her only. But now when I've been through a couple of workplaces, I just understand her now and her mental state, and I now see way better that how much toxicity she was in, and that was kind of a reaction to survive. So actually she was bullying for management, and that's how actually she's been put to a point to have a breakdown. Another thing, yes, people are hiring similar to them, and people similar to them, but that's being very normal if a white man does that. And So if a divergent person does that, it's a big gossip subject, and it's a big mobbing motivation for everyone, even for the diverse people. So there is also like, I'm not supporting anything here, but I'm just saying even here there is a different perception and judgments on people. Like,
and I find it really interesting, the assumption that we're tech leads or team leads. I've got 25 years experience in tech, and I've got nearly 10 years experience in leadership, and I'm heads of, like, I'm leading an entire region with 4 countries in it. So
sorry, Catherine. That was based on the way you and Carina talked about it. I just assumed, I made an assumption you were of talking about the same experience. My apologies if I.
No, I'm not offended. I just find it hilarious. You're looking at a person in their 50s who's female, and you're making an assumption. And if I was a person in my 50s who's male, I think that the requirements on you are different when you're female. And maybe I'm wrong there. I think in startups, a lot of men feel like they need to look younger too. But I think it makes a big difference. And the whole, how can you be taken seriously, makes a big difference. Yay for 50s people. Do we have any 60s people here? I'm always very interested in finding people who are older and still vibrant in their job, and where possible female, because it feels like a lot of us just lose. I think you start to lose traction, and then you start to lose energy.
Honestly, Catherine, I would recommend you have a look at Rebecca Parsons, who's the CTO of ThoughtWorks. I don't know how old she is. I think she's about 10 years older than me, but Rebecca, please, if you see this recording, I literally have no idea because I can't read people's ages very well. It's one of the joys of being queer. She has been the CTO of ThoughtWorks for 20-something years and is just continuing to grow. And she's just made a list of top CTOs we want to look at people want to watch in 2022 because of her ideas and the way that she brings them across. So I think there are places where women and people of difference get to maintain their vitality. And my apologies if I appeared to diminish you. I literally could not read from the tiny little square here. I can't read ages. According to me, you're all younger than me for a start, and that's about it. Because I'm so used to being the oldest queer in the room by at least 10 years. People make jokes of who's born in the 80s, and I'm like, oh, this is not going to end well. When I was born in the 60s, last 6 months of the 60s, but it counts. But I think there are interesting things around chrononormativity, around those expectations, around the time that people should take. If you've taken a non-normal career path, you can be older and still at a stage in your career, at different stages in your career. And people are like, oh, and it also impacts on a lot of younger women who are sometimes fast-tracked. They get put into a role and people are like, oh, you're awfully young to be in this role, or somebody will make a comment about it. And I'm like, no, you're in the role because you're good in the role. This is the right time for you. Nobody has to do everything on the same time as everyone else. This whole chrononormativity is bollocks, but then I think all the entire heteronormativity, patriarchal society structures are bollocks, and we should smash them, but that's an interesting viewpoint.
Well, I don't know if that's it from everyone, or if anyone else had any input or anything they wanted to talk about. But yeah, I mean, obviously thank you so much for everyone for getting involved and for being so interactive, and even if it's just in the chat box, it's great to hear everyone's thoughts and feelings. Thank you so much for coming. And I mean, this is our last event of 2021. It's been great to see some new and old faces, and hopefully we can see some more of you into the new year.